Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, should the church be taxed? That's one of the trending questions today because after President Akufo-Addo suggested that ostentatious lifestyles of some men of God could lead Ghana that path. We'll hear from the president shortly. But let's do this short exercise. What does the Bible say about taxes? And I'm going to quote from some Bible quotations here for you. In Mark 12:14, it says that they came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or should we not pay?" And here is Jesus' answer to that. You can find that in the 15th verse when you go further down on that same quotation. It says, "Why are you trying to trap me?" Jesus asked them. "Bring me a denarius," he says, "and let me look at it." In the verse 16, it says that they brought the coin and he asked them, "Whose image is this and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Verse 17, he says, "Then Jesus said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's." And they were amazed at him. Well, those are some Bible quotations for you. But as much as a lot of people don't like paying taxes, and as much as they say that the tax system could be corrupt and unfair, and even though people believe that there are other things they could use their money to, for, the Bible still says to pay. Yes, it commands you to pay. And I am not making that argument. I have a pastor in the studio who's going to help us with that particular argument. Before we hear from the president, let me introduce to you who I have in the studio. His name is Reverend Jonathan Asiedu Otibu. He's with the Christ Castle International Church in North Carolina, United States of America. Sir, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And also, someone will be joining me on the phone. He is a tax expert. His name is Kujo Akwabi. But let's first listen to President Akufo-Addo hinting us about the possibility of, well, perhaps Ghana imposing taxes on churches.
These are interesting times for all of us in our country as we grapple with the task of building a happy and prosperous nation. It could not be lost on anyone that there are increasing calls for churches to be taxed. It is not difficult to see what is driving these calls. For years, the churches were seen as leading the drive for development. They built and ran schools and hospitals. They led the campaign for good sanitation. Cleanliness was next to godliness. They preached and practiced. There were church services where worshippers sang to their heart's content, but there was no question of keeping whole communities awake night after night. Nor were there churches that were sources of noise nuisance. The priests in churches, leaders led their lives that the average person could identify with. I am not getting into the merits and demerits of the prosperity gospel that appears to be the main theme for many of our present-day churches. But the difficult truth is that once you get into the wealth and prosperity sphere, you necessarily slip and concentrate on being outrageous. It is not surprising that there are calls for taxes to be imposed on church incomes. When you step out of the charity sphere, out of education, and out of healthcare, you're putting yourself in the line of the taxman. Both institutions, that is government and the church, are leading the people, and both hold out promises for a better tomorrow. We have a duty and responsibility to work together to improve the condition of the people.
President Akufo-Addo, they're talking about what used to be and what we see now in terms of the lifestyle of some pastors. Well, some pastors actually made an appearance on PM Express here on JoyNews last night. They were expressing their views about the debate. Let's listen to them to set the tone for the conversation we're going to have today.
Laws must not be discriminatory. Now, those who are talking about church must pay tax, they sound very discriminatory. And that is not fair. Just define your concept that all those who are selling water pay tax. So whether you are a church or whether you are a mosque, whether you are a shrine, whether you are what, you pay. All those who are building facilities, you pay this tax. Whether it's church people building, whether Muslims building, whether Hindu, Buddhist, whoever, you pay. But if you single out church, I am saying it's discriminatory.
I guess the church is singled out because, these days they sell stickers, they sell oils, they sell, sometimes even a normal Voltic oil, the pastor prays on it and it's 60 cedis,
so,
it's 100 cedis.
Nana, all those who are selling Voltic water, you pay tax. Whether you sell it 100 cedis or 5 cedis, whether you sell it in church or in shrine, in mosques, you pay. So then you look for all those who are selling water. How much are you selling yours? So you pay whatever percentage.
Reverend Opuni, they're saying it is discriminatory. So really, what do you think? Should churches be taxed? We have a poll on that, and we'll go on Facebook for that. But let's take you first of all to the industrial area here in Accra for an interesting story about churches and taxes. Nancy Emefa-Jadosi has that report.
So we're currently at the industrial area here in Accra, and I must say that on our way here, we have counted not less than 5 churches. Now, I have been interacting with some residents, and they tell me off record that before these churches were put out, there were factories on these lands, factories that had employed people, factories that were paying taxes to government. But I mean, they were unable to break even, and so churches took over these lands. And we all know that churches do not pay tax now. But yesterday, President Akufo-Addo dropped the biggest hint yet, that churches are likely to pay taxes because it appears they have more from their mandate of giving back to society to become a show-off and a competition between churches to show that which church has money than the other. And so it has become a competition between the churches. And he thinks that it is high time that churches pay tax to government. But let me also note that it's not the first time government has come up with something like this. I mean, under President John Dramani Mahama, Mr. Setekpe, at the time, finance minister, mentioned there was a possible tax going to be placed on churches because they felt the churches were making money. And then also, Godfrey Dami, under this administration, mentioned it some time back. And now the president himself has hinted that churches are likely to pay taxes. We have been speaking to you on the street to find out, do you think it is high time churches pay taxes to government for their businesses?
It shouldn't be taxed because when you go to church, the main purpose of going there is to go and praise God, to worship God. So I don't think it's necessary for churches to be taxed.
Yes, I agree.
Why?
I agree because now the churches are making big money, because Ghana, almost every house has a member who goes to church, and we pay offerings and we buy things, we buy oils, communion wines, honey, all these things for directions. Of course, they sell to us, and in Ghana here, selling, buying and selling goes with tax. And I think it will be very prudent if the government does that.
It should be taxed.
No, that shouldn't be. Because where people worship, and I know when they start on mosques, on churches, they will definitely come on mosques, which is not advisable. So because mosques or churches are for, let me say, that is God's house.
That's a Muslim brother there. He said, don't tax the church, because once you tax the church, the next thing to go to is the mosque. Very interesting one. Reverend, let's start the conversation here in the studio now that we've been able to set the tone. Now, you followed all that they're saying.
Yes.
I think the question, let me just take your reaction to that. Various perspectives. People are saying if churches were meant to give back to society, comfort people, help people, and now we're doing lots of business in the church, certainly we ought to be taxed. Others say we should not tax the church.
Yeah, I think that the church is still helping people, and that is the basic responsibility of the church. And the work the church does cannot be quantified. Impacting the lives of people. I have some very strong young men in my church. I don't know where they would have been without church.
Okay.
I don't know the impact they would have had on the community without church.
Okay.
Most of them will come for prayer meetings instead of going out there to do other things that will be detrimental to the community. So the things the church does are beyond things that we can just calculate.
They're not really tangible.
Yes, and there are a lot of people who talk about church living extravagant life. The church leaders living extravagant lives. But I believe that there are more church leaders who are struggling to survive, to maintain a few sheep. So if you lump everybody together like that, it's going to be an unfair.
It's not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair to anybody.
Wow.
You know, so I think that we need to be really be specific. My main reason for talking about these things is that I think we lack something which we need to understand. That is the basic foundation of everything that is happening now. Lack of training. Lack of training. I mean, this is the dispensation for churches, you know, coming up, growing.
The churches all over the place.
If you go to the developed country,
Is it a good thing though?
It's a good thing.
Is it?
It's a good thing, you know, but the people must be trained. You know, in America, you find more pastors who are trained, who don't have churches.
What is a church tax relationship in America?
In
In
America, there's no tax. If you give your tithes and offering, we'll give you a receipt of that tithe. And at the end of the year, you can file for your tax and your tithes and your offerings back. The government will give it to you back.
No, I mean how? How does a government give you back money that you pay as that tithe?
Because you are giving to support a non-governmental organization to support because of the job and the responsibility of the church.
I see.
You know, for instance, if a church's responsibility is to gather wayward children from the streets, and we go out there, bring them together, we feed them, clothe them, and do that free of charge. We give them water to drink, we give them a place to sleep for free. The church and the government is not responsible.
So in other words, you're seen as supporting a charity organization when you're paying your tithe and offerings.
Yes, that is what it is.
So that you take your receipt and then you go back to the government and collect
say,
it.
I did this.
But is that fair? Should you go back to, I mean...
The government supports you for supporting. So people deliberately give money to charity, to churches, so that
they can get it back from government. Because they feel that government is not giving...
Not getting it back from the government. So that the charity organizations like churches will have enough money to be able to do their work.
So, but when you teach biblically, you're telling people that you're giving because you're giving to the Lord, not because you're giving, not because you're going to get it back from government.
Yes.
Is that biblical?
Yeah, it's entirely not biblical.
Because you're supporting them not to be biblical. If you're giving them receipts to go and collect the money from government.
No, we're supposed to give them receipt as a church. At the end of the year, we're supposed to give all your giving must be recorded. And then we need to give you a receipt of how much you've given. And then you can add it to your tax returns and say, this is the money I've given the whole year. And I need to get my returns back.
Interesting. So you don't think that taxing the church is a way to go. But in the U.S., for example, we understand that the taxes on donations actually work. So if you make a donation, you pay tax on it. Do people pay taxes on donations they make to the church?
People pay taxes on the donation they make to the church. They don't pay taxes on donations they make to the church.
They don't?
No. If you make a donation to the church,
they are donating to a charity organization.
The government pays the money back. A percentage of that money is given to you at the end of your tax year.
I see.
So the government doesn't tax you.
I see. So in that case, what will be your recommendation for the way forward? Now that, you know, some key persons within government have mentioned it. Now President Akufo-Addo has mentioned it. He's actually preceding that with the lifestyles of some pastors. Of course, we've seen what's happening on social media now, where pastors are buying very expensive cars and putting it out there and etc. What would be your recommendation if you were to advise government on how to deal with this situation?
I think that we have to...
Not being biased.
Yeah, I think we have to create a situation where people can be educated. You know, people give what they have. If they don't have anything, they don't give anything. You know, what they give is what they have. If there are no training to the leaders, the pastors, there's no way they can give anything out. So I think that there must be training. You know, and that's one of my basic responsibilities.
But you don't want the church to pay taxes?
No, I don't believe that the
church
should pay.
You don't believe that?
Yeah,
okay, let me find out from Mr. Akpabi. He's a Kujo Akpabi. He's a tax expert. Let me find out quickly what he also thinks of this. People are calling for the church to be taxed. Do you agree?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Akpabi. You agree?
Yes, I can hear you.
You think that churches should pay taxes?
Well, churches are considered as a charitable organization. Now, you work at Joy FM. If you receive your salary, you are taxed at source. Now you go to your church and pay offering or tithe. That cannot be taxed, because if that is done, it means you are being taxed twice. But, however, if the church engages in commercial activity, which we see, in fact, there is a church in England, I wouldn't want to mention the name.
Yeah, I feel there's a church in England.
The Inland Revenue got to know that the church has so much money, running into millions. Because there's a branch here, I wouldn't mention the name. So the tax authorities went in and were checking from the members whether you know you have this so much money. They went into it, and so many things he was doing improper. And he was asked to pay taxes, he was charged, otherwise he will go to
jail. So what is your recommendation? Your recommendation will be that churches should, the GRA, for example, should begin to check these churches and tax them according to their activities.
Yes, we see the so-called pastors, not all of them, some of them. In fact, the churches, the established ones, have bank accounts. The ones that don't have, the tax authorities see all these people. So go in there, call for their books. When I used to be with Internal Revenue Service, we did have tax audit division. I don't know whether it's still there. Go in there, call for their books, their financial statement, and find out the movement of funds from their books. And it will be very easy. Whether the pastor or whoever or bishop or whatever
is doing right,
engaging in illegal activity, which most of them are doing. And we see them with the fleet of cars.
Until that exercise is done, we may not know. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for your contribution. Mr. Akpabi, Kujo Akpabi, he's a tax expert, and I think that he speaks, well, he sort of doesn't really speak for you, but there are people, churches that are engaging in other activities, and those activities have to be tracked and taxed appropriately. I've actually run out of time, but we had a poll on Facebook, and I don't know if we can look through that quickly. But Doc, Reverend, let me just find out from you your very final thoughts on this going forward. And we understand that this is your 25th year in ministry.
Yeah.
You started here at Joy FM?
Yeah, in the middle.
In the middle, thereabout. Right.
But
So,
I stayed here for long.
Okay. Okay, well, tell us about it.
Yeah. I've been in ministry for 25 years. It's been an interesting journey. And basically, my call has been planting churches. And so it's never easy to plant a church. But so far, I've planted 6 churches.
6 churches. Where and where?
Here in Ghana and in the United States.
In the United States.
Yes.
And we're going to tax you so that we're going to tax you.
No, my churches need money to support and
they
make it
need
happen.
money.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we tell you what he wants to do on his 25th anniversary, let's go on Facebook now. This is what people are saying. Should churches be taxed? That's a very simple and straightforward question. 72% of people, okay, this is actually Twitter, I beg your pardon. 72% of everybody that answers says yes, churches should be taxed. 28% said no. All right, so that's the poll we conducted. 75. A lot of people want churches to be taxed. I don't know. You feel bad about that?
Oh, I don't feel bad about it. I think that is education. It's understanding what we are doing as a church. So it's very important for us to understand that the main objective of a church is to be able to impact the community. I mean, there are a lot of things that churches does that you cannot quantify, like I said. You know, we had churches that started from the grassroots like nothing. Now they've built universities. They are impacting communities.
And they're paying taxes.
They are paying taxes.
Okay.
And pastors can pay taxes on their salary, which is what pastors must do. You know, but going directly to church to tax, I don't think is a proper thing. It will just flip up to other things, like going to the malls, to the voodoo man, to the juju man, and everybody.
Then it should go everywhere, and the mosques and everyone should pay tax. Okay, we really run out of time.
Thank you.
But Congratulations, 25 years in ministry.
Yes.
You're holding a Thanksgiving service on Sunday?
Yeah.
This Sunday. Where is the church?
At the Osu Children's Home.
Osu Children's Home.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
yeah,
wow. God bless you,
Thank you
for
very
giving
much.
out. So maybe we won't ask you for giving to
I hear
Osu
you.
Children's Home. Reverend Jonathan Asiedu Otibu there. He's 25 years in ministry today, but he's been helping us talk about whether or not churches should be taxed. He thinks that education, a lot more education should go in there.